Mastery by Robert Greene is a book about one of the most powerful ideas in personal growth. The highest level of success does not come from quick talent, instant recognition, or lucky breaks. It comes from a long process of learning, practice, observation, and deep development. In a world obsessed with speed, shortcuts, and overnight success, Greene argues for something much more demanding and much more rewarding. He argues for mastery. This book matters because most people never stay with anything long enough to become exceptional. They become interested quickly, but distracted just as fast. They compare themselves to others too early. They lose patience when progress feels slow. They want visible rewards before invisible skills are fully built. Greene challenges this mindset completely. He says that greatness is not random. It follows patterns. Across history, in art, science, business, politics, invention, and craft, the people who reached extraordinary levels usually went through a similar path. That path begins with deep learning. It moves through years of practice and discipline. It includes failure, frustration, and slow improvement. Eventually, if the process is sustained long enough, the person develops intuition, creative power, and a kind of effortless ability that looks almost magical from the outside. But Greene reminds us that what looks magical is usually the result of an invisible process that took years. One reason this book feels powerful is that it does not only talk about career success. It talks about human potential. Mastery is not just about becoming better at a job. It is about understanding how to shape your mind, sharpen your perception, and develop the highest version of your abilities. It is about moving beyond mediocrity and beyond dependency on external approval. Greene also gives the reader hope. He does not frame mastery as something available only to rare geniuses. He believes that many people can move much farther toward excellence than they realize if they learn to work with reality, commit to the long process, and stop expecting instant payoff. So from the very beginning, mastery asks a serious question. Are you willing to live in a way that develops your deepest abilities, or will you keep chasing speed and surface-level success? That question sits underneath the entire book. And Greene's answer is clear. A meaningful life is built through deep work, long apprenticeship, and the steady pursuit of mastery. One of the first major ideas in mastery is that every person has what Greene calls a life's task. This does not mean there is only one perfect job for every human being. It means that each person has certain natural inclinations, interests, energies, and patterns of curiosity that point toward the kind of work they are most deeply suited for. Greene believes that mastery becomes far more possible when you align yourself with this deeper direction. He argues that many people lose connection with this natural path early in life. They are pushed by family expectations, social pressure, fear, money concerns, or the desire to fit in. Instead of following genuine curiosity, they follow what seems safe, respectable, or immediately rewarding. Over time, this creates a quiet problem. They may function well enough, but they do not feel fully alive in their work. Their effort becomes heavy because it is not connected to their deeper nature. Greene wants readers to rediscover what truly draws them. What fascinated you early on? What kind of problems do you naturally love thinking about? What work makes you forget time? What subjects return to your attention again and again, even when no one is forcing you to focus on them? These questions matter because they reveal patterns of genuine attraction. According to the book, this inner pull is important because the road to mastery is long and difficult. If you choose a path only because of status or external reward, you may not have the energy to survive the years of effort required. But if the path connects to a deeper part of your nature, then even the hard stages become meaningful. You are not just working. You are answering something within yourself. This idea is powerful because it shifts career thinking away from shallow success and toward inner fit. Instead of asking only what pays well or what looks impressive, Greene encourages people to ask where their deepest interests and strengths intersect. That is often where unusual energy appears. He does not suggest waiting passively for some perfect revelation. He suggests active exploration. You move toward what attracts you, observe what gives you real energy, and pay attention to recurring signs. Over time, a direction becomes clearer. This section of the book is both practical and philosophical. It reminds the reader that mastery begins long before excellence. It begins with choosing a path worth devoting yourself to, and in Greene's view, the more your work reflects your true nature, the more likely you are to endure the long journey toward greatness. After discovering your direction, Greene says the next stage is apprenticeship. This is one of the most important sections of the book because it explains why mastery always begins with humility. Before you can lead, innovate, or express your full creativity, you must first learn deeply. That means entering a phase where your main job is not to impress people. Your main job is to absorb reality. In modern culture, this stage is often undervalued. People want to skip ahead. They want authority before skill, visibility before substance, and recognition before competence. Greene warns that this impatience is destructive. The apprenticeship phase exists for a reason. It is where you build the foundation that everything else depends on. During apprenticeship, you study the rules of the field, the structure of the craft, the hidden details that beginners usually miss, and the practical realities that no theory can fully teach. You learn from experience, not just from ideas. You make mistakes. You observe closely. You build discipline. And little by little, your understanding stops being shallow. Greene emphasizes that this stage often feels frustrating because progress is not always visible. The work can feel repetitive. Your limitations become obvious. You may feel inferior compared to those who are far ahead. But this discomfort is part of the process. Apprenticeship trains perception. It teaches patience. It builds real skill instead of borrowed confidence. He also advises readers to use this period strategically. Learn as much as you can. Accept difficult tasks that expose you to the real workings of the field. Seek environments where the standards are high. Watch how experienced people solve problems. Pay attention not only to what they say, but to what they do. A key lesson here is that apprenticeship is not passive. It is active learning. You are not merely waiting your turn. You are gathering tools, sharpening judgment, and building an inner structure that will later support independent work and creative power. This stage matters because without it, future ambition rests on weakness. A person who skips apprenticeship may look impressive for a while, but under pressure, the shallow foundation will show. Greene's message is clear: there is no shortcut around learning deeply. The apprenticeship phase may not be glamorous, but it is where real transformation begins. It is where raw interest becomes disciplined ability. And if you respect this stage instead of resisting it, you prepare yourself for a level of competence that most people never reach. A major lesson in mastery is that growth becomes much faster when you stop resisting the process. Many people want the rewards of mastery, but they fight the very conditions that produce it. They dislike repetition. They resent correction. They get bored with fundamentals. They want to feel advanced before they have earned it. Greene says this mindset blocks development. To make real progress, you have to submit to the logic of the process. That means accepting that skill takes time. It means understanding that boredom can be useful. It means realizing that practice is not a punishment. It is how the mind and body are shaped to higher levels of precision. This part of the book is especially important because it challenges modern impatience. We are surrounded by messages telling us to move fast, scale quickly, and chase visible results. Greene pushes in the opposite direction. He says that when you are learning something important, slowness can be an advantage. Repetition is not the enemy. Careless speed is. He also stresses the importance of emotional control. During the long path of learning, there will be setbacks, criticism, comparison, and periods of doubt. If you react to every difficulty emotionally, you will waste energy and weaken your focus. But if you accept difficulty as part of the path, your mind becomes steadier. You stop interpreting every struggle as a sign you are failing. You start seeing struggle as a sign that you are training. Greene's point is not to become robotic. It is to become realistic. The road to high-level skill has patterns, and one of those patterns is that progress is often slow before it becomes powerful. You do not need to enjoy every moment, but you do need to stop expecting the process to feel smooth and rewarding all the time. There is a kind of quiet freedom in this. Once you stop demanding constant proof that you are advancing, you can focus more fully on the work itself. You become less distracted by how you appear and more committed to what you are building. This lesson applies in every field. Whether you are learning writing, business, music, design, programming, leadership, or any other craft, there comes a moment when you must choose between ego and process. Greene makes his position clear. Those who choose process eventually gain a depth of ability that ego-driven people rarely reach. Mastery begins when you stop asking for shortcuts and start respecting the long structure of learning. One of the most valuable parts of mastery is that Greene does not treat mastery as only a technical process. He also sees it as social. No matter how talented you are, you develop inside a world of people, mentors, rivals, gatekeepers, collaborators, clients, and audiences. That means understanding human nature becomes part of mastery itself. Greene argues that many capable people sabotage their own progress because they are socially unaware. They misread power dynamics. They speak too soon. They act from insecurity. They become defensive under criticism. They fail to understand what motivates other people. In doing so, they create resistance that blocks learning and opportunity. To avoid this, Greene encourages a kind of social apprenticeship. Observe people carefully. Notice patterns in behavior, emotion, ambition, fear, and ego. Learn when to speak and when to stay quiet. Learn how to listen without instantly reacting. Learn how to read a room, understand timing, and adapt your behavior intelligently. This does not mean becoming fake or manipulative. It means becoming perceptive. The person who understands people well can navigate complex environments more effectively. They know how to learn from mentors without provoking unnecessary conflict. They know how to work with difficult personalities. They know how to protect themselves from emotional traps. Greene believes this social intelligence is crucial because mastery rarely happens in isolation. Even great creators are shaped by networks of influence, opportunity, and exchange. If you are blind to the social world, then even strong technical ability may not be enough. He also suggests that emotional self-control plays a major role here. Many social mistakes come from wounded pride, impatience, envy, or the need to prove oneself. These reactions cloud perception. A calmer mind sees more. It notices what others miss. This idea makes the book richer because it shows that mastery is not simply about becoming good at a task. It is about becoming sharper in how you understand reality, including the reality of human behavior. That wider awareness makes your growth more sustainable. In the end, Greene's message is practical. If you want to rise in any field, learn the craft deeply, but also learn people deeply. Technical skill may open the door, but social intelligence often determines how far you can go once you are inside. Another major theme in mastery is the value of mentors. Greene shows again and again that many great figures developed faster because they learned under someone more experienced. A mentor can shorten the learning curve, expose hidden rules, correct mistakes early, and help the apprentice focus on what actually matters. This is important because self-teaching has limits. A person working alone often cannot see what they are missing. They may practice the wrong things, misunderstand the deeper standards of the craft, or waste years on avoidable mistakes. A good mentor helps reveal the structure behind the surface. Greene does not portray mentorship as passive dependence. He expects the apprentice to work hard, observe carefully, and extract as much value as possible from the relationship. The mentor provides direction, but the learner must bring discipline, curiosity, and humility. He also makes the point that not every mentor will be warm, easy, or perfect. Some may be demanding. Some may be distant. Some may teach more by example than by direct advice. What matters is not the personality style alone, but whether the person can expose you to a higher standard of thinking and practice. This section of the book also teaches a useful attitude. When learning from a mentor, do not focus only on praise or approval. Focus on understanding. Watch how they think, how they solve problems, how they handle pressure, how they organize their work, how they make decisions. Often the most valuable lessons are not explicitly explained. They are embedded in behavior. Eventually, the learner must outgrow simple dependence. The purpose of mentorship is not lifelong imitation. It is accelerated development. At some point, the apprentice internalizes the lessons, becomes more independent, and begins to form a personal style. But that transition is much stronger when it is built on a serious period of guided learning. This lesson remains deeply relevant today. Many people want instant independence and assume asking for guidance makes them weaker. Greene argues the opposite. Strategic humility can make you stronger much faster. Learning under someone capable is not a sign of smallness. It is often one of the smartest steps on the road to excellence. Mastery is personal in the end, but it is often shaped through others. A mentor does not walk the path for you, but they can help you see the path more clearly and avoid losing years to confusion. Greene places enormous importance on practice, but not just any practice. He is talking about long, deliberate, focused engagement with the core skills of a field. This is where the mind begins to change. The beginner may rely on effort, rules, and conscious thought. But through enough repetition and correction, the work starts moving deeper into the nervous system. Patterns become easier to recognize. Responses become quicker. Judgment becomes more refined. This is one of the most fascinating ideas in the book. Mastery is not only external achievement. It is internal transformation. Through sustained practice, you literally begin to perceive differently. You notice subtleties that others miss. You detect patterns faster. You sense possibilities earlier. What once looked complex becomes readable. Greene explains that this kind of growth requires intensity and attention. Mere repetition is not enough if the mind is half asleep. Practice must involve awareness. You must observe your mistakes, adjust your methods, and stay mentally engaged. That is what gradually raises your level. He also emphasizes endurance. The mind often wants novelty because novelty feels exciting. But real advancement frequently comes from returning to the same fundamentals again and again, each time with a deeper eye. This is one reason most people do not reach mastery. They want constant stimulation, while mastery often demands sustained attention to things that look ordinary on the surface. Yet this repetition is not empty. Over time, it produces something extraordinary. Skills become embodied. Confidence becomes grounded in real ability. The person no longer imitates from the outside. They begin to act from an inner understanding. This process applies to almost anything. Writing, negotiation, leadership, design, athletics, public speaking, coding, teaching, and music all require repeated contact with the core actions of the craft. There is no substitute. Greene's lesson is both humbling and empowering. It is humbling because it reminds us there is no shortcut around practice. But it is empowering because it shows that excellence is not just mysterious talent. It is built through repeated contact with reality and repeated correction over time. The more seriously you practice, the more your mind adapts to the demands of your field. And eventually, what once felt unnatural starts to feel like second nature. That is one of the signs that mastery is beginning to take shape. After long apprenticeship and deep practice, Greene says a person can enter what he calls the creative active phase. This is where things become especially interesting. At this stage, the learner is no longer just following rules. The fundamentals have been absorbed deeply enough that the person can begin shaping the craft in a personal way. They can improvise, innovate, and create something new. This is a crucial point because mastery is not mere obedience. Greene does not want people to become permanent imitators. The purpose of learning the rules is to internalize them so completely that you can later move beyond them with intelligence. Once the structure is inside you, you can bend it, extend it, and reimagine it. In this phase, intuition becomes much stronger. Decisions that once required slow effort can happen more naturally. Patterns appear more quickly. The person trusts their developed judgment because it is based on years of direct contact with the field. That creates a new kind of freedom. Greene shows that many great masters reached this stage when they stopped copying others and began expressing a unique relationship to the craft. They still respected the fundamentals, but they were no longer trapped by them. They could combine influences, see new angles, and solve problems in original ways. This phase is also where work often becomes more alive. The years of struggle begin to turn into fluidity. Creativity is no longer random inspiration. It is grounded invention. Because the person knows the field deeply, they can play with it intelligently. But Greene also warns that this stage cannot be forced too early. Many people try to be original before they are grounded. They reject discipline too soon and mistake rebellion for creativity. Real originality usually comes after structure, not before it. This is an encouraging lesson for anyone afraid that discipline will make them less creative. Greene argues the opposite. Deep discipline is what eventually makes high-level creativity possible. It gives you enough command of the material to explore it freely. The creative active phase is the reward of long effort. It is the stage where mastery becomes visible not only in confidence, but in originality. The person is no longer just performing the craft. They are now reshaping it through their own mind. That is one of the highest forms of achievement the book describes. One reason mastery feels deeper than a normal career book is that Greene understands the emotional challenges of long-term development. The path to mastery is not only difficult because the work is hard. It is difficult because the emotions can be hard to manage. There will be doubt, envy, frustration, boredom, loneliness, fear of failure, and impatience. Greene makes it clear that emotional control is part of mastery. If you let every mood dictate your effort, you will never stay with the process long enough. If comparison destroys your confidence, you will become distracted by other people's timelines. If criticism crushes you, you will avoid the feedback necessary for improvement. If boredom makes you quit fundamentals, your foundation will remain weak. This is why he repeatedly returns to self-awareness. You need to know your emotional patterns. What discourages you most easily? What triggers envy? What kind of praise makes you lazy? What setbacks make you doubt your path? Once you understand these patterns, you can manage them better instead of being controlled by them. He also suggests that part of maturity is learning to shift attention away from ego and back toward the work itself. When people become overly obsessed with recognition, they suffer more. They want validation before they have fully developed. But when attention is returned to learning, building, and improving, the emotional burden becomes lighter. The work itself becomes stabilizing. This is a profound lesson because it explains why some very talented people never reach their potential. Their skills may be strong, but their emotional life is too unstable. They cannot endure the ordinary discomforts of the path. Greene's answer is not emotional suppression. It is emotional discipline. Feel what you feel, but do not let it govern your direction. Return to practice. Return to patience. Return to perspective. That perspective matters. The road to mastery is long. Temporary humiliation is not the end. A slow month is not the end. A difficult season is not the end. What matters most is whether you keep building. In this way, mastery becomes a test of character as much as talent. The person who learns to manage their inner world gains a tremendous advantage. Because in the long run, consistency beats intensity that cannot last. And emotional steadiness is one of the secret foundations of consistency. A powerful thread throughout mastery is Greene's challenge to the myth of talent. He does not deny that natural differences exist. Some people begin with certain advantages. But he argues that society often exaggerates talent and underestimates development. We see someone operating at a high level and assume they were simply born special. We ignore the years of struggle, learning, and repetition behind the performance. This myth is dangerous because it makes people passive. If greatness belongs only to the naturally gifted, then effort feels less meaningful. People either assume they have talent or they do not. Greene rejects that limited view. He shows that many extraordinary individuals became great through long development, strategic learning, and relentless refinement. This matters because it changes how we respond to difficulty. If you believe talent is everything, early struggle feels like evidence that you are not meant for the field. But if you understand that skill grows through practice and apprenticeship, then struggle becomes part of the process rather than a verdict on your ability. Greene's view is more demanding, but also more liberating. It says you are responsible for much more of your growth than you might think. You may not control every starting condition, but you do control whether you commit, whether you learn deeply, whether you practice intelligently, and whether you endure long enough to transform. This also reframes admiration. Instead of envy, you can study excellence. Instead of saying, they are just gifted, you can ask, what process built that level of ability? What habits, standards, and years lie behind what I am seeing now? That question leads to learning instead of insecurity. The deeper truth here is that potential is often hidden inside effort. Many abilities remain invisible until they are developed under pressure. People discover their capacity by committing to something seriously enough that new levels of themselves are forced to emerge. Greene is not promising that everyone will become world-famous or historically great. His point is more human and more useful. Most people are capable of far deeper confidence, creativity, and power than they realize if they stop worshiping talent and start respecting the developmental path. That is one of the most motivating messages in the entire book. You do not need to begin as a master. You need to begin the right process and stay in it long enough for your deeper abilities to appear. As mastery moves toward its deeper conclusions, Greene presents mastery not just as skill, but as a form of freedom. This is an important shift. At first, the process can feel restrictive. You submit to apprenticeship. You practice fundamentals. You accept correction. You delay gratification. But over time, these disciplines produce something unexpected: freedom of action, freedom of perception, and freedom of self-expression. A person who has mastered a field is less dependent on external approval because their confidence comes from real competence. They are less easily shaken by surface-level trends because they understand deeper structures. They can act with greater precision because they see more clearly. In that sense, mastery creates power, not the shallow power of image, but the real power that comes from ability. Greene also suggests that mastery leads to a richer relationship with reality. The master does not merely perform tasks. They enter the deeper logic of a craft. They sense patterns that others miss. They feel connected to something larger than routine work. That kind of relationship can be deeply satisfying. This is also where self-expression becomes important. Once a person has passed through discipline and apprenticeship, they are finally able to express something genuine at a high level. Their individuality is no longer just raw personality. It becomes shaped, refined, and effective. What they create carries both technical strength and personal signature. This is one reason Greene believes mastery is such a meaningful life path. It gives people a way to develop themselves fully. It unites discipline with creativity, effort with identity, and competence with contribution. Rather than drifting through life distracted and half-formed, the person pursuing mastery becomes more integrated. There is also dignity in this idea. In a shallow culture, mastery reminds us that depth still matters. Precision still matters. Patience still matters. It affirms that the slow development of real ability is worth far more than temporary appearance. Greene's broader message is that mastery changes who you are. It is not just something you achieve and place on a resume. It reshapes your mind, your habits, your confidence, and your relationship to work and life. In that sense, mastery is more than excellence. It is a path toward becoming fully capable, fully engaged, and more fully yourself. At its heart, Mastery is a book about what happens when a person commits deeply to the long process of developing their highest abilities. Robert Greene's message is clear: greatness is rarely sudden. It is built through discovering a path that fits your deeper nature, enduring apprenticeship, learning from mentors, practicing with intensity, developing social intelligence, mastering your emotions, and staying with the process long enough to reach originality and power. The book pushes back against many modern illusions. It rejects the fantasy of instant success. It rejects the shallow worship of talent. It rejects the idea that surface-level visibility is the same as real achievement. In place of all that, Greene offers a demanding, but much more powerful truth. Lasting excellence comes from long development. Several major lessons stand out. First, choose a path connected to your genuine inclinations, because mastery requires long-term energy. Second, respect the apprenticeship phase instead of trying to skip it. Third, submit to repetition and practice, because they transform the mind from the inside. Fourth, learn people as well as skills, because social intelligence shapes opportunity. Fifth, manage your emotions, because impatience, envy, and ego can destroy years of progress. And finally, understand that true creativity comes after deep discipline, not before it. What makes this book so compelling is that it treats human potential seriously. It asks more from the reader than comfort or ambition. It asks for patience, humility, discipline, and focus. But in return, it offers something rare: a path toward deep competence, real independence, and meaningful self-expression. If you take one big idea from Mastery, let it be this: stop measuring success only by speed and external recognition. Measure it by depth. Measure it by how seriously you are developing your abilities. Measure it by whether you are becoming someone capable of exceptional work. Because in Greene's view, the road to mastery is not reserved for a tiny group of chosen people. It is available to those willing to commit to reality, endure the long apprenticeship, and keep refining themselves beyond what is easy. And that is the lasting power of this book. It reminds us that the most valuable achievements in life are often built slowly, invisibly, and patiently, until one day the skill, judgment, and creativity become undeniable. That is mastery.